Jasmine Reid stood outside the towering building of Cross Design Collective, her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest. The morning sun reflected off the glass facade, making the structure gleam like a beacon of everything she'd worked toward. This wasn't just another job interview. This was the interview that could launch her career into the stratosphere. She smoothed down her navy blazer, took a deep breath, and pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was breathtaking with its marble floors, cascading water features, and modern art installations that spoke of wealth and sophistication. Every detail whispered success. The man who commanded attention, Miss Reid. The receptionist's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Mr. Cross will see you now. 5th floor, executive suite. Jasmine's heels clicked against the marble as she made her way to the elevator. Her heart hammered with each ascending floor. She'd researched Damien Cross extensively, 35 years old, self-made millionaire, transformed his family's struggling architecture firm into the most sought-after design collective on the East Coast. But nothing prepared her for the man himself. The elevator doors opened, and there he stood in the hallway as if he'd been waiting. Damien Cross was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. His charcoal suit fit perfectly, but it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Deep green, intense, and currently fixed directly on her. Jasmine Reid, he said, his voice smooth and commanding. I've been looking forward to this. She extended her hand, professional smile in place. Mr. Cross, thank you for this opportunity. When his hand closed around hers, warmth flooded through her. The handshake lasted a moment too long, his gaze holding hers with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. She pulled away first, reminding herself to breathe. Behind closed doors, follow me, Damien said, leading her down a corridor lined with stunning design portfolios. I like to conduct interviews in my private office. More comfortable, more honest. The office was stunning with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture and walls adorned with architectural sketches. Damien gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. But instead of sitting behind the desk, he pulled another chair closer, sitting directly across from her. Tell me why you want to work here, he began, leaning forward slightly. And please, skip the rehearsed answers. I want the truth. Jasmine felt heat rise to her cheeks. His directness was disarming. Honestly, because your designs make people feel something. They're not just buildings or spaces. They're experiences, emotions, captured in form and function. That's what I want to create. Something flickered in Damien's eyes. Approval? Interest? Something more? Show me your portfolio, he said softly. Dangerous territory as Jasmine opened her portfolio. Damien moved closer, their shoulders nearly touching. She could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker, more mysterious. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through her designs. This project here? Damien's finger pointed to her restaurant concept, brushing against her hand in the process. Tell me about your inspiration. I wanted to create intimacy in a public space, Jasmine explained, acutely aware of how close he was. See how the lighting curves here? And the seating arrangements. They create pockets of privacy while maintaining openness. Intimacy, Damien repeated, his voice lower. That's rare. Most designers forget that spaces should feel like embraces. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world stopped. Jasmine felt herself leaning in, drawn by something she couldn't name. Then reality crashed back, and she quickly looked down at her portfolio. You're hired, Damien said suddenly, standing up. Start Monday. My assistant will send the details. Jasmine blinked, caught off guard. Just like that? Just like that. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. I trust my instincts, Jasmine. And my instincts tell me you're exactly what we need here. As she left his office, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that those instincts had nothing to do with her. First days and lingering looks Monday morning arrived with nervous excitement. Jasmine dressed carefully in a cream blouse and black pencil skirt, professional yet confident. The office buzzed with activity as she settled into her new workspace, a sleek desk with a view of the design floor. Fresh blood. A cheerful voice called out. A young man with bright eyes and an easy smile approached. "I'm Oliver Cross, Damien's cousin and business partner. Welcome aboard." "Thank you," Jasmine smiled, immediately liking his warm energy. "Word of advice?" Oliver leaned in conspiratorially. "Damien's intense, but he's fair. Just don't take the brooding personally." As if summoned, Damien appeared across the floor. He moved through the office like he owned not just the space, but the air itself. Employees straightened as he passed, respect and perhaps a little fear in their eyes. When his gaze found Jasmine, it lingered for 3 heartbeats too long. The warning that evening? Jasmine met Nina at their favorite coffee shop. Her best friend took one look at her face and groaned. "Oh no. What happened?" "Nothing happened," Jasmine protested, stirring her latte unnecessarily. "Jazz, I've known you since college. Something definitely happened." Nina's dark eyes narrowed. "Is it a guy? Please tell me you didn't already meet someone at work." "It's not like that," Jasmine said, but her voice lacked conviction. "My boss is just... intense. Intense." "How?" Nina demanded. "Intense like demanding? Or intense like you want to climb him like a tree?" "Nina, that's what I thought." Nina sighed. "Listen, office romances are dangerous. Especially with your boss. I've seen too many friends get their hearts broken or lose their jobs or both." "I know," Jasmine admitted quietly. "I know it's a terrible idea, but you're thinking about it anyway." Jasmine didn't answer, which was answer enough. Working late by Thursday, his bomb had fallen into a rhythm at Cross Design Collective. She loved the work, the creative energy, the challenge. But she couldn't ignore the electric current that ran through her every time Damien was near. "Jasmine." His voice came from behind her as she worked late on a residential project. "Still here?" She turned to find him leaning against her cubicle wall, tie loosened. Looking somehow both exhausted and entirely too attractive. "Just finishing the Miller House concepts," she said, gesturing to her screen. "I wanted to get them right." Damien moved closer, studying her designs. "You're thinking in layers. I like that." His hand reached past her to point at the screen, and she felt the heat of his body near hers. "But here, see this corner? You could create more flow if you..." Their eyes met as he turned his head. They were inches apart. Close enough that Jasmine could see flecks of gold in his green eyes. Close enough to feel his breath. "Damien," she whispered, using his first name without thinking. "We shouldn't, I know," he said softly, but he didn't move away. Neither did she. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Finally, Damien straightened, stepping back. But his eyes held promises neither of them were ready to speak aloud. "Good work today," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Go home. Get some rest." As Jasmine gathered her things, her hands shook slightly. She was in trouble. Deep, dangerous, exhilarating trouble. And somewhere in the quiet office, Damien stood alone in his office, staring out at the city lights, knowing he was crossing a line he'd sworn never to approach. Some attractions were too powerful to ignore, no matter how much wisdom said otherwise. Design skills. 3 weeks into her position at Cross Design Collective, Jasmine found herself trapped in a dangerous dance. Every day brought new moments of tension with Damien. Accidental touches while reviewing blueprints. Lingering glances across conference rooms. Conversations that lasted longer than necessary, delving deeper than professional topics warranted. She tried to maintain distance. Truly she did. But Damien had a way of appearing exactly where she was. In the break room when she grabbed coffee, at her desk when she worked late, in the elevator at precisely the moment she needed to go upstairs. "We have a presentation for the Thornton account next week," Damien said one afternoon, perching on the edge of her desk. "I want you to lead it." Jasmine looked up, surprised. "Me? But I've only been here a month. You understand their vision better than anyone else on the team?" he countered. His green eyes held that intense focus that made her stomach flip. "Besides, I'll be right there with you." That was exactly what worried her. Oliver's observation. Oliver caught up with Damien in the hallway after a client meeting. The two men had known each other their entire lives, and Oliver could read his cousin like nobody else. "You need to be careful," Oliver said without preamble. "Careful about what?" Damien replied, though his jaw tightened slightly. "About the way you look at Jasmine Reid." Oliver kept his voice low. "Half the office has noticed. You're not exactly subtle." Damien stopped walking, turning to face his cousin. "Nothing's happened yet," Oliver added. "Look, I get it. She's talented, beautiful, and clearly brilliant. But she works for you. That's a line you don't cross." "I know what the lines are," Damien said coolly. "Do you?" Oliver challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, you're about to step right over them." Damien didn't respond, which told Oliver everything he needed to know. The presentation that changed. The Thornton presentation arrived with high stakes. The clients were demanding, their budget enormous, their vision challenging. Jasmine spent hours preparing, crafting every detail of the pitch until it sang. The morning of the presentation, she dressed in a burgundy dress that Nina insisted made her look powerful. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, her makeup perfect. Professional armor. When she entered the conference room, Damien's eyes darkened. He nodded approvingly, but something hungry flickered across his face before he masked it. "Ready?" he asked quietly as the Thornton executives filed in. "Ready," Jasmine confirmed, though her pulse raced. The presentation was flawless. Jasmine spoke with passion and precision, painting vivid pictures of spaces that would transform the Thornton hotel chain. Damien added technical expertise, but mostly, he watched her command the room with barely concealed pride. When they won the account, the entire team celebrated. But as champagne flowed in the office, Damien caught Jasmine's eye across the room and gestured subtly toward the hallway. Stolen moment. She found him on the empty rooftop terrace, a space usually reserved for executive meetings. The city spread out below them, lights beginning to twinkle in the dusky evening. "You were incredible today," Damien said, handing her a glass of champagne he'd brought up. "Thank you." Jasmine accepted the glass, their fingers brushing. That familiar electricity sparked between them. "I couldn't have done it without your support." "Don't diminish yourself," he said, moving closer. "That was all you. Your vision, your passion, your talent." The way he said passion sent shivers down her spine. They stood at the railing, shoulders almost touching, the sounds of celebration muffled below. "Damien," Jasmine began, then stopped. What could she say? That she thought about him constantly? That professional boundaries felt increasingly impossible to maintain? "I know," he said softly, as if reading her thoughts. "I feel it too." The admission hung in the air between them. Dangerous, honest, terrifying. "We can't," Jasmine whispered, though her body swayed toward his. "I know that too." His voice was rough with want and frustration. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. A cool breeze swept across the terrace, and Jasmine shivered. Without thinking, Damien shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The gesture was tender, protective, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with care. That scared her more than the attraction, trapped together 3 days later. Fate intervened in the form of a maintenance malfunction. Jasmine stepped into the elevator at 6 in the evening, exhausted from a long day. Just as the doors began to close, Damien's hand shot through, stopping them, going down. He asked with a slight smile. "Eventually," she replied, stepping aside to let him in. The elevator descended 1 floor before jerking to a sudden stop. The lights flickered, and then everything went dark, except for dim emergency lighting. "What happened?" Jasmine asked, trying to keep the panic from her voice. Damien was already on his phone calling maintenance. "We're stuck between floors. They're saying it'll be at least an hour before they can get us out." An hour. Trapped in a small space with Damien Cross, Jasmine's heart hammered for reasons that had nothing to do with claustrophobia. Truth in the darkness, they sat on the floor, backs against opposite walls, facing each other in the dim light. The intimacy of the situation was undeniable. "Tell me something true," Damien said after several minutes of silence. What do you mean? Something real. Something you don't usually share. His eyes glinted in the shadows. We're stuck here anyway. Jasmine considered refusing, but something about the darkness made honesty easier. I'm scared I'm not good enough. That everyone will realize I don't belong in a place like this. Imposter syndrome, Damien said softly. I know it well. You. Jasmine couldn't hide her surprise. But you built this company. You're successful beyond most people's wildest dreams. And I wake up most mornings wondering if today's the day it all falls apart. He ran a hand through his hair. Success doesn't erase doubt, Jasmine. It just raises the stakes. This vulnerability from him was unexpected, precious. Jasmine found herself leaning forward, drawn by more than just attraction now. Your turn, she said. Tell me something true. Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment you walked into my office. And it terrifies me. Jasmine's breath caught. Damien, I know all the reasons it's wrong, he continued, meeting her gaze. I'm your boss. The power dynamic. The complications. I know every single reason I should stay away from you, but... Jasmine prompted, her voice shaking slightly. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it in here, he placed a hand over his heart, are two different things. The air between them felt charged, electric. Jasmine could feel her resolve weakening with every passing second. We should maintain boundaries, she said, though it sounded weak even to her own ears. We should, Damien agreed. But he was moving now, crossing the small space between them. We absolutely should. He knelt in front of her, close enough that she could see the conflict warring in his green eyes. Want and restraint. Desire and duty. Tell me to stop, Damien whispered, his hand reaching up to cup her face gently. Tell me this is wrong, and I'll go back to my side of the elevator. We'll pretend this never happened. Jasmine opened her mouth to say exactly that. To be sensible, professional, smart, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. Jasmine, he breathed her name like a prayer and a curse. She opened her eyes, finding his face inches from hers. Her hand came up, fingers trembling, touching his jaw. The scratch of stubble, the warmth of his skin. The barely controlled breathing, she whispered one last time. Even as her lips moved toward his. I know, he replied. Closing the distance between them, their lips were a breath apart when the elevator jerked violently. The lights flooding back on, both of them scrambled apart as the elevator began moving again. By the time the doors opened on the ground floor, they were standing on opposite sides, a respectable distance between them. But the maintenance worker who greeted them took one look at their flushed faces and knowing smiles appeared on his weathered face. Aftermath Jasmine practically ran from the building, her heart racing. She made it 2 blocks before she had to stop, leaning against a building wall, trying to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nina. Dinner tonight? You look like you need to talk. How did Nina always know? Back in the building, Damien stood in his office, staring out at the darkening city. Oliver appeared in the doorway, taking in his cousin's tense posture. What happened? Oliver asked. Got stuck in the elevator, Damien said without turning around. With Jasmine? Oliver cursed softly. Did you? Almost. Damien finally turned, and Oliver saw the conflict written plainly on his face. We almost did something that can't be undone. Almost isn't done, Oliver pointed out. You still have a chance to step back from this, do I? Damien asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like gravity, Oliver. Like falling without any choice in the matter. Oliver had no answer for that, because he'd seen the way Jasmine and Damien looked at each other. And he knew that some forces of attraction were too powerful to fight forever. The question wasn't if they would cross that line. The question was when, and what would happen when they did. 2 weeks passed in a blur of work and careful avoidance. Jasmine and Damien danced around each other, professional in meetings, distant in hallways. But the tension only grew. It's thick enough to suffocate everyone around them. The annual Cross Design Collective Gala arrived on a Friday evening. The event was legendary in the industry. Influential clients, major investors, press coverage, and expectations sky high. Attendance was mandatory for all senior team members, including new rising stars like Jasmine. She stood in her apartment, staring at the emerald green dress hanging on her closet door. Nina had helped her pick it out, sophisticated, elegant, but with a back that dipped low enough to make a statement. "You're going to be stunning," Nina said from the doorway. Already dressed in her own cocktail dress? As Jasmine's +1, she'd been looking forward to this for weeks. "I'm going to be a mess," Jasmine corrected, applying the last of her makeup with shaking hands. Because of him? It wasn't a question. Nina knew everything about the elevator incident, the stolen glances, the mounting tension. "I don't know how to be in the same room with him anymore," Jasmine admitted quietly. "Everything feels like it's about to explode." "Maybe it needs to," Nina said softly. "Maybe you both need to face whatever this is instead of running from it." Arrival. The gala was held at the Grand Ashford Hotel, a building that Cross Design Collective had renovated 3 years prior. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, and elegantly dressed guests mingled with champagne and conversation. Jasmine entered on Nina's arm, immediately feeling dozens of eyes turned toward them. She'd pulled her dark hair up in a sophisticated twist, the green dress hugging her curves before flowing down to the floor. She felt exposed and powerful all at once. "There's your boss," Nina whispered. Nodding toward the far end of the room, Damien stood in conversation with several executives, impeccable in a tailored black tuxedo. But the moment Jasmine entered, his attention shifted. Their eyes locked across the crowded room, and the noise of the party faded to background static. He looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Like he wanted to cross the room right then. Consequences be damned. Oliver appeared at Damien's elbow, saying something urgent that broke the spell. Damien tore his gaze away, but his jaw was tight with barely controlled emotion. "Hey, girl?" Nina breathed beside her. "If that man looked at me like that, I'd spontaneously combust." Not helping, Jasmine muttered. But she couldn't stop the heat flooding her cheeks. The green-eyed monster. The evening progressed with toasts, networking, and carefully choreographed mingling. Jasmine found herself talking with potential clients, discussing projects, showcasing her expertise. Several times, she felt Damien's eyes on her from across the room, but when she looked, he was deep in conversation with someone else. Then she saw her, a stunning blonde in a silver dress. Laughing at something Damien said, her hand resting casually on his arm. The woman was clearly comfortable with him, familiar in a way that made Jasmine's stomach twist. "That's Victoria Hammond," a voice said beside her. She turned to find Oliver with 2 champagne glasses, offering her one. His ex-girlfriend. "They dated for 2 years, ended things 6 months ago," Jasmine said, trying to sound disinterested even as jealousy clawed at her insides. "I didn't realize." "She wants him back," Oliver continued, watching the pair across the room. "Has been trying for months. And Damien's been completely uninterested. Until you showed up, I don't think anyone realized why." Jasmine looked at Oliver sharply. "What do you mean?" "Come on, Jasmine. Everyone sees it." Oliver's expression was kind but serious. "The way you two orbit each other. The tension. It's like watching a supernova about to happen." "We haven't," she began. "I know," Oliver interrupted gently, "and I respect that you're both trying to do the right thing. But I also know my cousin. When Damien wants something, truly wants it, restraint only lasts so long." The balcony escape. An hour later, Jasmine needed air. The ballroom felt suffocating. Too many people, too much champagne, too many stolen glances at Damien with his ex-girlfriend still hovering nearby. She slipped through a side door onto a secluded balcony overlooking the city. The cool night air was a relief, and she leaned against the railing, closing her eyes. Running away? Jasmine's eyes flew open. Damien stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm light from the ballroom. He'd loosened his bow tie, and there was something raw in his expression. "Needed a moment," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. He moved onto the balcony, letting the door close behind them. Suddenly, the space felt very small, very intimate. You look beautiful tonight, Damien said quietly. I've been trying not to stare all evening, but I'm failing miserably. You seem to have had plenty of distractions, Jasmine said before she could stop herself, immediately regretting the jealous edge in her voice. A smile tugged at Damien's lips. Victoria? She's been throwing herself at me for months. I've told her repeatedly, we're done. You don't owe me explanations, Jasmine said, looking away. Don't I? Damien moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Because it feels like I do. It feels like I owe you a lot of things I don't know how to give. The confession. Jasmine turned to face him, her back against the railing. The city lights sparkled behind her, but Damien only had eyes for her face. What are we doing, Damien? She asked softly. This push and pull, this dancing around each other. I can't keep doing this. I know, he said, his voice rough. I've tried to stay away. Tried to maintain distance, to be professional. But every time I see you, every time you're in the same room, it's like I can't breathe properly until I'm near you. It's not fair, Jasmine whispered, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. You're my boss. The power dynamic alone makes this impossible. And what happens when it ends? When you realize I'm just another don't, Damien cut her off, his hands gripping the railing on either side of her, caging her in without touching her. Don't diminish this. Don't diminish yourself. Whatever this is between us, it's not simple attraction. It's not just physical. It's dot 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 dot. I was odd. What is it? Dot dot up dot up dot up dot up dot up dot up dot not up dot up dot up what dot. She challenged, looking up at him. What is it? Terrifying, he admitted. You terrify me, Jasmine Reid, because I look at you and I don't see an employee. I see someone who challenges me, who makes me want to be better, who sees through every wall I've built. And I don't know what to do with that. Jasmine's breath came faster. They were so close now, the heat between them almost unbearable. We shouldn't do this, she whispered. But her hands were gripping the lapels of his jacket. Holding him close, instead of pushing him away, Damien said, his forehead nearly touching hers. Someone might see, she added weakly, even as her body betrayed her, leaning into him. I don't care anymore, Damien breathed. I've spent weeks caring about should and shouldn't, about rules and boundaries. But right now, all I care about is that you're here. And I'm here, and I'm tired of fighting this. The surrender, Damien. Jasmine said his name like a warning and a plea. Tell me you don't feel this, he challenged, his hand finally moving to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Tell me you don't think about me the way I think about you. Tell me you don't want this as much as I do. Jasmine couldn't, because she did feel it, all of it, with an intensity that scared her. I do, she admitted, her voice breaking. I want this. I want you. But I'm so scared. So am I, Damien confessed. But I'm more scared of walking away, of spending my life wondering what if. His other hand slid around her waist, pulling her flush against him. Jasmine's hands moved up to his shoulders, her resolve crumbling. We shouldn't, she whispered one last time. But she was already tilting her face up to his. Then stop me, Damien said, his lips hovering over hers. Tell me to walk away, and I will. But Jasmine couldn't form the words. Instead, she closed the final distance between them. The kiss, when their lips finally met, it was like a storm breaking. All the tension, the want, the weeks of denial erupted in a kiss. It was hungry and desperate and achingly tender all at once. Damien's hand tangled in her hair, careful not to destroy the elegant styling, but holding her close. Jasmine melted into him, every nerve ending alive, every thought focused on the taste of him, the feel of his body pressed against hers. He kissed her like he'd been starving for it, like she was air and he'd been drowning. She kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring weeks of longing into this single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment you walked into my office," he confessed. "I know," Jasmine said, her fingers tracing his jaw. "I wanted you to. What happens now?" Damien asked, vulnerability clear in his voice. Jasmine pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "I don't know. This is complicated. The office, the rules, everything we could lose. Is it worth the risk?" he asked, his thumb brushing across her kiss-swollen lips. Jasmine thought about playing it safe, about walking away, about doing the sensible thing. But then she thought about how alive she felt in this moment, how right it seemed, despite everything wrong about it. "Yes," she whispered, "you're worth the risk." Damien smiled then, a real smile that transformed his face from handsome to devastating. He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise instead of an explosion. Aftermath inside the ballroom, Nina noticed Jasmine's absence and went searching. She found them on the balcony, wrapped in each other, the city lights painting them in gold and shadow. She smiled to herself and quietly retreated. Some moments were too precious to interrupt. Oliver, too, had noticed his cousin's disappearance. He saw them through the glass, saw the way Damien held Jasmine like she was precious and essential all at once. He shook his head, half worried, half happy. Whatever came next would be complicated. There would be challenges, whispers, difficulties they couldn't even anticipate yet. But watching them together, Oliver couldn't deny the connection was real. Sometimes the right thing and the smart thing weren't the same. Sometimes you had to follow your heart, even when your head screamed warnings. The beginning as the night wound down. Damien and Jasmine stayed on the balcony, talking softly, stealing kisses, planning nothing and everything. "Tomorrow, we'll have to figure out how this works," Damien said, his arm around her shoulders as they looked out at the city, the office, the policies, how to navigate this properly. "Tomorrow," Jasmine agreed, leaning into his warmth. "But tonight, can we just be us? Just Damien and Jasmine? No complications?" "Tonight," he agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Tonight, nothing else matters." Below them, the city hummed with life. Above them, stars fought to shine through the light pollution. And between them, something new and terrifying and wonderful had begun. They both knew challenges lay ahead. Conversations with HR, potential gossip, the delicate dance of maintaining professionalism while nurturing something deeply personal. There would be obstacles, doubts, moments when the risk seemed too great. But in that moment, on that balcony, with the taste of each other still on their lips, none of it mattered. They had crossed the line they'd been dancing around for weeks. There was no going back, nor did either of them want to. The forbidden had become reality. The whispered we shouldn't had transformed into we did. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Because some connections are too powerful to deny. Some attractions transcend reason. And some risks are worth taking, even when you know they'll change everything. Jasmine and Damien had taken that risk. And as they stood together, wrapped in each other's arms with the city spread out before them, they both knew that this was just the beginning of their story. A story that started with a glance, grew with tension, and ignited with a kiss. A story that would test them, challenge them, and ultimately transform them both. But that was a story for tomorrow, all the tomorrows that followed. Tonight, they had each other. And for now, that was enough.